Hello, everybody. I'm Seth Brenzel. I am a parent leader with Decreasing the Distance here in San Francisco, and I'm here with Michelle Parker. She is with 2nd District PTA, and today we've asked Michelle if she could give us a few minutes of explanation on this thing that we keep hearing about, the LCAP. Hey, Michelle, thanks for being here, and so glad that you could spend some time with me today. First, can you tell all the parents who might be watching this what is the LCAP? What is it all about? And why is it important? And why should families care about it?
Yes, well, I'm happy to be here. Always happy to talk about the LCAP. So nice to see you. So, the LCAP is the Local Control Accountability Plan. That's what it stands for. There's lots of acronyms in education, as everybody knows. And the LCAP is related to the local control funding formula, which the state of California passed in 2013. And what that was is just a way that we wanted to fund schools throughout the state. Um, and it had heavier weighting for certain focal groups of students. It's really similar to what we do here in San Francisco with the weighted student formula. So school districts will get more money based on, well, they have a certain base amount per student, depending on your elementary, middle, and high school. And then there's more concentrated and supplemental grants as part of LCFF if you've got large groups of low income students, English learners, and foster students. Those are the three subgroups in the local control funding formula. So as part of the legislation, they require every district to write an LCAP. And that is an accountability plan that tells how you're going to spend those state funds. So the bulk of the money we get in San Francisco comes from LCFF, from the state, through that particular funding formula, right? And so this accountability plan tells us how we're going to spend that money, what our goals are. They have 8 big goal areas at the state level that they want our district to align with and show how we are going to improve student outcomes, especially for our focal groups, by using those funds. Like what are the activities we're going to do? How are we going to measure our progress? And just how we're going to allocate the resources to do all that. So that's what the accountability plan establishes. And the law requires that you involve stakeholders when you create that plan. And that includes parents. It's students, parents, community members, but also parents. So right now we'll talk about parents. It has a parent advisory committee for every school district that collects input and then has to provide that input in writing in a report to the school district, to the superintendent and school board. The superintendent is required to provide a written response to their feedback. You're also within the legislation required to have at least one hearing on the LCAP. The legislation requires you to present a draft LCAP to the community that they can then respond to. And that's where the report is supposed to happen, and the feedback from the parent advisory group and the other stakeholders. So those are some of the requirements within the legislation.
So, given that that's how the process is supposed to go in terms of parent involvement piece, maybe you could say a little bit about where we are at SFUSD this year with our LPAC, and also say a little bit. Maybe there are districts that are particularly exemplary that you know of, or how they're handling it.
Yeah, sure. And I think what I didn't quite add on, although maybe people got this from the last thing that I just said, is why it matters. If this is a lot of money going to our district and it's supposed to be improving student outcomes, that's why it matters, and the fact that that the state recognized parents are supposed to be involved in this, that's why it matters. It's like, it's a lot of our money. We got to make sure our kids are getting what they need. So, so the process right now in our district is we have an LCAP task force that is made of SFUSD staff, community members, parents. I sit on that task force as a representative from the 2nd District PTA. And we meet monthly throughout the year, and we hear some information around the budget. We're supposed to hear some information about the activities and programs that the district is doing so we can monitor the data, see if there's actually progress being made. So that's what we're supposed to do. The district this year, granted, had a bit of a, strange and hard year. We were all in a pandemic, and so the district staff were consumed with reopening schools this spring. We've had a lot of budget documents and kind of interim LCAP related type things that they've had to do. And so they didn't do the same kind of community engagement. There were a few community meetings. The PTA hosted one. The districts are supposed to have a way for parents to provide written feedback.
Mm,
That wasn't ever done.
mm,
The parent advisory group, that's supposed to provide feedback as part of the official process, did give a report to the school board last week, but that was a report based on the feedback we got in community meetings and feedback we've collected from families all year, but it was not in response to an LCAP draft. We still have not seen an LCAP draft.
oh,
So that is concerning.
yeah.
And so we won't see an LCAP draft until next Thursday at our LCAP task force on the 10th. We're supposed to see a draft. But there is a hearing at the school board next Tuesday. So what hasn't happened that is supposed to happen is that there's been an LCAP draft that parents and other stakeholders can respond to. And then, and there hasn't been a way for members of the community to submit responses to that draft in writing. Those
Mm,
things have not happened.
right.
One of the other things that's supposed to happen is all those school plans for student achievement, the SIPSAs that you might hear about in your school site councils, those are supposed to roll up to inform the LCAP. That is supposed to have happened. We have somebody at the central office who reviews those and makes sure they're incorporated. So that supposedly has happened. I don't know. I haven't seen like how those actually trickle up yet, but supposedly that has happened. So the process right now is there's a budget committee meeting Wednesday night this week where they'll present some information. There will be a hearing next Tuesday at the general board meeting. We will be getting a draft LCAP next week. The day after the LCAP task force sees the LCAP draft, the superintendent will be providing written response to the report that we gave last week. So it'll be a response to the report that was given without seeing an LCAP draft.
Mm,
And then the board at the end of this month, at their second full regular board meeting, will vote on the LCAP, as you know, along with the budget. They have to do it before the end of June.
okay.
So I
Very
don't know if you have
compressed.
questions about that.
Well, yeah, but just a very compressed timeline and a
Yeah.
timeline. It sounds like that's actually after the school year has ended because that today, June 2nd, is the end of the school year. So parents, if they want to participate in this, will need to keep paying attention to school board meetings and some of these other activities over the next couple of weeks.
Right, which is normal, because June is always, if you ever follow the state budget, the school budget, this is when those meetings happen. It's always in June because their fiscal year ends on June 30th. So that's fairly normal. But what has happened some in the past is that we'll see a draft in April that we can then respond to and have community meetings around. And so that didn't happen. So that's where it feels like a very compressed timeline, is because if we see a draft next week, then we just have very little time to give feedback and then get a response to it before there's a final draft approved by the board. So that part is very compressed.
Yeah,
You asked about school districts who are doing this well.
yeah.
I'd say that probably every district varies by year, on how they do it well or not. Like we've done it okay in our district in some years in the past. Some of us from the LCAP task force had a meeting last week with LA Unified to see what they've been doing, because we noticed online that they have been doing some things well, and learned that they have held several community meetings. They have 6 goals in their LCAP, and they held a meeting once a month on each of those goals and shared data and had conversations with focus groups around their district, which is great. And it's a process that was led by some of their family engagement folks. And they have a person who actually manages the LCAP in their district. We don't have that. It's our budget office. And so we need a little bit more staffing and support in our district to really support effective and meaningful stakeholder engagement around the LCAP. So anyway, they had these great meetings, where they presented data and said, let's talk about it and let's talk about our progress towards these goals. So that's great. And they have provided ways for people to give feedback, and they've trained site leaders on how to engage their own communities about this topic too. So
This is maybe something for the future.
mhm.
I mean, I think you've kind of got to one of my other questions, but I think, kind of wrapping up. I mean, this is a great encapsulation of what the LCAP is. There's lots of information here. What do you think parents can do now about the LCAP that's rolling out in the coming days? And what might you suggest for the future?
Yeah. So, one quick note is that this is a 3-year document, but every year they are required to do an annual update. So, we aren't going to have this conversation again in 3 years. Well, we will, but we will also have an opportunity annually to provide input and for the district to update its LCAP. So, in my opinion, it's important that people recognize that this is not an ideal way this process has gone. You know, it could have been done in a more meaningful way. And so if people want to give comment to the board and just say, this has not been followed the way Ed Code spells out that it needs to be followed, we just want to acknowledge that and acknowledge this has been a really rough year and ask for a written commitment from the district to do better next year. That might include dedicated staffing. That might include, let's make this a year-round process, because this is not just a budget document. This is a document that communicates our values as a district. And so in the fall, we should start reviewing those goals and talk about the progress and look at the data together to really understand how the district is serving our students. And so that is an ask people can make is, let's start this in the fall. Let's have conversations about data and progress. And then when we get to community engagement in the spring, that it needs to, we need to go to places where people are, not just expect them to come to us. Like, we know that's good community engagement, right? You go to where people are. We need to do that. We need to have more ways that the district initiates to gather feedback and not only rely on volunteers to do that. So those are a couple of asks, but it needs to be a year-round discussion about our values and our progress towards serving our students. And that's what they should ask for. And they should ask for a commitment to making it better next year.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle. This has been super informative. I know our parents who are watching this video will be interested in the information you've shared. And thanks everybody for tuning in. If you want to get engaged in this, you can contact us here at Decreasing the Distance through our Facebook page or through our website. And it's clear we really need people watching the budget and LCAP process this month. It's June, the time is now. This process has real impacts on your school site and what services are available, how we're spending our money, and I think also to Michelle's point, to how the values of the district are expressed. So it's really important to be paying attention. We at Decreasing the Distance are going to request in writing that the district commit to a better, more comprehensive process next year, much like Michelle outlined, with real parent and community engagement and input. We think that's very important for future iterations of the LCAP process, but it's not too late to participate this year. Watch for announcements about upcoming meetings, make public comment, and engage as much as you can during June. Thanks, everybody, and thanks again, Michelle, for being with us and with me today. Any last thoughts you'd like to share?
All I would say is that parents' voices matter, caregivers' voices matter. So speak up. Your job is to be an advocate for your child and for the other children in our community. So just keep doing that.
Great. Well, that's a great note to end on. Thanks so much, Michelle. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
You too.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.